Louisiana versus all y'all. Jarrett Rosa here with Catholic High Baton Rouge coach Gabe Fertitta on a Tuesday morning, about a week and a half now away from a fourth straight state championship appearance for the Catholic High Bears, fresh off of that big semifinal victory going down to New Orleans and beating Brother Martin. And honestly, coach, I'm glad that your kids don't know the city as well as we did growing up, because I was in Uptown, you guys are in Mid-City, and if Zach Boulay could have found his way to me to let me know that you guys were continuing to bust my bracket, I probably would have seen him ride up on me at Newman just to make sure I heard about it as quickly as possible.
He'd have probably rode up on you on a horse, too. He's a character, man.
Congrats to you guys on another victory. And thanks for joining me this morning. Just kind of take me through some of that, getting a huge victory against the top-seeded Crusaders down there, Brother Martin, and punching your ticket to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty awesome. We played Rummel. A lot of people told us that at the end of the regular season that they felt like Rummel was playing their best football and some of the best football in the Catholic League. And then you turn on the tape and you see Brother Martin and you're like, there ain't a whole lot of drop off if that's what people are saying, And I think Coach Bonise and those guys at Brother Martin just do a phenomenal job. They make you prepare for a lot. And our kids were really well prepared. They I thought handled the travel, handled the situation, all of that really well. And, it was a back and forth contest, and we came out like gangbusters and scored 21 points right off the bat. But, in the back of my mind the whole time, I knew, this Brother Martin team is really good. There's some really good players. There's some veteran players, and this thing's going to be a battle down to the end. And sure enough, it was. So, but proud of our kids and our coaches for the preparation that they had going into that game, then executing it last Friday night.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Brother Martin team wasn't going to quit. Just, a week earlier in the post game, as you're talking to your guys after that victory against Rummel up at Memorial Stadium, Jesuits winning that quarterfinal game pretty late, final minute, and as you're talking to your guys, Brother Martin's making that final drive to set up that game, and so you got kind of the battle that you were anticipating. I did want to get into some of the specifics of some of the guys and what you've seen from them through this playoff run. You've had some people come up with some really big performances, and seems like some moments where you're seeing some young guys really grow up before your eyes. I did want to, while we're still talking about New Orleans a little bit, I told you months ago I was going to give you an opportunity to mention your Mount Rushmore of Louisiana rap. And I thought we'd be doing one of these again more quickly, but we've only had interviews post game, kind of being rushed out of Memorial Stadium. So I want to give you a chance while we're still in New Orleans in the conversation to who are your four guys on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I think Lil Wayne is an obvious he's an obvious choice, just because of his worldwide acclaim and just the catalog, that he's got. It's pretty significant. So Lil Wayne's an easy one. I think one of the ones that people probably don't give enough credit for is Master P. I think we've talked about that. Master P was one of the first guys to take the rap game and say, this is just my side job. Now I'm going to have all these other businesses and show that you can be an entrepreneur. And, he had the movie stuff. He did, and then all the things they did with their label, the iconic CD covers. You bought a CD, well, it was like 28 songs on that sucker, you know what I mean? Like, you were getting your money's worth when you bought a No Limit CD. So Master P has got to be on there for me. Then now you're getting into some of the more local guys. I think Juvenile is a guy that could be on there. I think those are my top three. Who am I forgetting? You caught me off guard here.
Yeah, I know. I'd let it linger so long that you didn't realize, especially with you guys focused on Byrd, that I was going to throw you the Mount Rushmore
Yeah, you
question
got me.
again.
One that I got in trouble when I was in high school. My mom had to drive my car, and I had a Mystical CD in the CD, not in the CD player. It was in the Walkman. You plugged it into the tape deck, and you put the CD in the Walkman, and I had a Mystical CD in there, and my mom got in the car and drove the car around. She came back and she said, "I'm gonna tell you what, that the language on that CD you had in there, it was terrible. However, man, I really like that guy. He kind of sounds like James Brown." And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly right. He does sound like James Brown." So I'm a Mystical fan. I might even try to put him up there. I know after this interview's over, I'm gonna think of a few others that probably should have been up there, but Lil Wayne and Master P are easy first ballot guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. I think one that, as soon as Amos Morale and I came into this conversation at whatever point that was in the summer, one of the questions I asked him was about if we're talking about including kind of the business side, which boosts Master P up that much more, and if we're including some of the production side, which I think really helps Manny Fresh in that conversation too, if you talk about what he meant with everyone he was involved with and just different roles.
Absolutely. You can't do Lil Wayne and Cash Money without Manny Fresh. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Getting back to you guys, and I mean, coming off of those two huge playoff wins against the reigning champions and the number 1 seed, and now heading into this matchup with Byrd, I'll start kind of at the top in terms of age, the seniority. George Hart seems like he's having about the best run of his career. He's played a role for you guys prior to this year, and now he's got the juniors in that backfield with him. You guys have a stable of guys again, but George, since late in the regular season and then carrying through everything you've asked him to do this postseason has been phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm so happy for him. A lot of people probably don't realize just how hard that guy works. On a team full of guys that work really hard, his work ethic stands out even above, a whole team full of guys that bust their butt. So I'm really happy for him. It really just seemed like he worked so hard on his speed in the off season. And then we did the combine and he ran 4.62, which was what I did not think he was going to run that fast. I thought legitimately, he might run like a mid 4.7 or something like that. So going into the season, when you looked at his highlights from the previous year, he had everything on the highlights that you would want, except a breakout run, one where you could see that he had the breakaway speed. And then we go through the whole season and the competition we play is so tough. We just never could get him on one of those breakaway runs. It seemed like every time you turn around, it was Corey Singleton that was popping one of those. And Corey is another guy I'm sure we'll talk about. But George having those runs against Rummel really was something that I thought was going to put him on the map, because he's got the size, he's got the vision, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And now people are able to see he's got the breakaway speed too. And just an instinctive football player. I mean, you can't just throw a guy into the quarterback position and teach him that in 2 or 3 weeks if they're not just a stud,
Yeah, and those backs have been so big for you because you mentioned the quarterback position. Landon O'Connor has been shaken back from that ankle injury a few weeks or about a month ago now. And so you've had some additional responsibilities for George. The running game has been huge for you guys all year. Corey Singleton has had a fantastic junior campaign. Jackson Guest comes up with 98 rushing yards on Friday in a really big spot there in a state semifinal. I mean, how fantastic have those guys been? Tay Nicholas involved there, and when you need Trey Benson to come in and use his legs instead of going out there as a receiver, he's had some plays, including a couple touchdowns in that Rummel game. To have that many weapons back there, how nice has that been, particularly as you have to watch a freshman quarterback grow up and he has that help in the backfield?
Yeah, we really pride ourselves here on if a guy is capable and talented enough to get on the field and contribute, we're going to find a way in the game plan to get them on the field. And we've done that before with extra linemen, like when we've had maybe 6 or 7 offensive linemen that we thought were really talented and had some skill sets that we could use. We put extra linemen out there when we have receivers that can do that, which in the past, receiver has not been a position where we have a bunch of really just overly talented kids. We've always had some really hard-working guys. We've always had some really tough, hard-nosed kids, but it's been a while since we've had game breakers out there. And this year we really have 4 guys that can break the game open there. And then, at tailback, I've always believed, especially in this playoff, that you've got to have more than just the one bell cow at tailback. It's a long season. We like to run the football. If we can run the football, we're going to do it. And those guys get a lot of wear and tear, and they get banged up. And so it takes a lot of guys to carry that load for us. And it's been a blessing for Daniel, the freshman QB, to have all those different weapons. And then also it makes game planning a whole lot of fun. You can draw up some great stuff with these guys, getting them the ball, trying to figure out ways to get them the ball in space. And this tailback crew, about as deep as I think we've ever had. George, who we just talked about, Corey Singleton, who is, 215 pounds and just running away from folks left and right. Jackson Guest, who I said this in the post-game interview last week, Jackson Guest reminds me a lot of a guy we had in 2015 named James Berrigan. James Berrigan was Clyde's. If Clyde was Batman, James Berrigan was Robin, and Jackson might get a carry here, 2 or 3 touches there in a game. And then all of a sudden last week we needed him to come up big and he was ready. And then Tay Nicholas, who is really a threat, catching the ball out of the backfield, getting out on the perimeter. He can run it between the tackles, and all those guys are big. Last year, we had George, who was close to 200 pounds last year, but Josh and Braylon were, Josh was 175 pounds, give or take. Braylon, was a water bug. These guys are all pushing 200 pounds. Talon is the quote smallest of the 4 guys, and he's 185 pounds, so we've been really blessed there at that position, to say the least.
Braylon, a little water bug with apparently a really good-looking report card from, or whatever, his first semester, his fall semester at Southern. So you guys got some good things happening with those guys.
I'm so proud of that dude. Yep, that's awesome.
You mentioned Daniel, the freshman quarterback. For him, he has to come into that game against Acadiana kind of on the fly. Had only been up with you guys as a varsity player for a short time, and comes up with the huge throw in a critical moment to Trey Benson for a go-ahead touchdown late. And you've seen him continue to kind of take on a little bit more. He had to deal with a much improved Woodlawn team in the regular season finale, and then had his spots, had a touchdown throw to Daniel Harden in the quarterfinal, and then comes up and goes 9 for 16 on Friday in a state semifinal with 3 touchdowns to Shelton Sampson. What have you seen from him just over the last month, from being thrown into the fire to now? It seems like he's kind of getting more comfortable, and you guys are getting more comfortable with him, or at least as the playoffs have gone, kind of opening it up a little bit more to him to make some of those plays.
Yeah, he's one thing about him is he's a tough kid, you know, and I told the guys this on the Cox broadcast before the game on Friday, but he really reminds me a lot of Miles Brennan when Miles was a freshman. You know, Miles was just eat up with football. All he wanted to do was watch film and work out. He was tough. He threw a great ball. He was this tall, skinny, blonde-headed kid, you know. And his older brother had played for me at Stanislaus. You know, there's all these comparisons, and in a lot of ways, I think Daniel reminds me of a young Miles, in that you know, he doesn't get too up, he doesn't get too down, and he knows. You tell him something one time, even in passing, and it's like gospel in there. You know, he'll remember it, and then he can not only remember it, but then he can put it to use on the field when the pressure's high. So I've been really, really pleased with him. He's made some really good decisions. Some of his best decisions have been on plays where he didn't throw the ball, you know, and just protected the football, tried to get back to the line of scrimmage, and didn't do something that was going to hurt the team. You know, a lot of times the young quarterbacks, they know they got the strong arm, they know they can do those things, and they sometimes force those throws or force those decisions when they're just not there. And that's usually something it's kind of like breaking a wild horse. You know, you kind of have to break them of that. And Daniel has not had to do that. You know, he's just, there was a play against Acadiana. We threw a screen pass, and the big, tall defensive end jumped up and batted it. And the ball was right in front of Daniel. And he knew instinctively that he could just swat the ball away, and it wasn't a fumble or anything, that he could just swat it so that it wouldn't get intercepted or anything like that happen to it. And that play was, when that happened, I was kind of like, man, like I've never gone over that with him. You know, I mean, that's just him being a football player. So we're really pleased with him. And then, you know, we've got all these weapons around him at receiver, and you know, he's doing a really good job of distributing the ball around to all those guys when those plays are there. And so he's been quite a bright spot for us.
One of those talented receivers, the kid I mentioned, had the 3 touchdown receptions, Shelton Sampson Jr., who, after you guys had the combine event in the summer, all of a sudden Power 5 offers started rolling in for him. And I was really interested to see how he kind of handled this year. And you guys had been run heavy, and he'd had some relatively quiet nights that I'd seen you guys, and then explodes in this semifinal. And for me, it reminded me a little bit, just from, again, afar. I wasn't there in person to watch the way he kind of carried himself with it, but the sophomore year playoff run that Chris Hilton Jr. had, where it seemed like a light kind of went off, and he had a moment where he realized, you know, I may be a sophomore, but I'm as good as anyone else on this football field. Did Friday feel to you as significant of a moment in his career and potentially taking a step as it did just kind of looking at the numbers in that moment to me?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's been battling a little groin injury for the past couple of weeks. So even the games that he did play a few weeks ago, he was kind of battling that a little bit. And then he didn't play for however many weeks. And we really felt like there were some things that were going to be there in the passing game for us against Brother Martin. And, you know, it's kind of a combination. It's a combination of Shelton coming into his own a little bit, but also it's Daniel. It's us feeling confident enough and comfortable enough with Daniel expanding some of the passing game install so that we could put these things in to give Shelton those opportunities. I think Shelton, he's very, very quiet. He's an extremely quiet kid. I have never seen from him a lack in confidence or belief in his ability. You know, truthfully, I think last week was partly more about us just giving him the opportunity to do that. I think he could have done that all year. I think last week was just the timing was right. All the stars kind of aligned, and we talk a lot about, you know, when the $1 million account walks through the door, are you going to be ready? You know, Are you going to be ready? If you are a guy working at an investment firm and this guy who wants to invest $1 million just walks in the door unannounced, are you ready? And the $1 million account walked in the door Friday night. It was his turn. It was his time to go, and he was ready to go. So I was really proud of him for that. And then I also think that's going to pay dividends for us in the championship game, because you can't watch that game and not have a Shelton Sampson plan. You know, if you're just going to put one guy over there and hope that that guy can guard him, I think when you put the film on from Friday night, I think coaches will realize that we probably have to keep a safety over the top of this guy and do some different things. And then when those things happen, other things, you know, it's give and take. You can't put a safety over the top of our 6'4" receiver and defend the run game. And you can't defend the run game with enough hats in the box and put a safety over the top of the 6'4" guy. So I think that was a big moment for all of us in the program.
You mentioned the fun of game planning week to week with all of those running backs, and you guys have a fantastic tradition and history and lineage of running backs coming through the program. And now you have a freshman quarterback, 2 sophomore receivers, and I mean several juniors that you'll have back next year. But for the next 2, and then for Daniel Beale 3 years, as a head coach, you've got to be really excited about what the future holds over there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're, you know, not to get ahead of ourselves, but the next few years are going to be really, really special here. Our freshman team this year was fantastic. We had some really, really talented young freshmen, even some 8th graders that were just really, we have a big, tall receiver, Amari Clayton, who I can't believe I'm talking to you about an 8th grader, but this kid is going to be just, he's unbelievable. Of course, you have Daniel in that group. We have these twins, the Wright brothers, Brooks and Bradley Wright, who are dynamite. I mean, you're going to see Brooks Wright play safety and quarterback at Catholic next year. I mean, he'll be playing on the field somewhere on defense, and he'll probably come in and play sort of that George Hart role, except the guy can read progressions and throw, you know. So we'll have a 2-headed monster at quarterback again. Reinholtz and Benson, who seem like they've been on the team for forever, are only juniors. Tay Nicholas, Corey Singleton. We have a young freshman named Barry Remo who could play at linebacker or at running back. Our offensive line, which is returning a bunch of guys. Emery Jones returning at tackle. Where the future is really bright for us. You know, it's one of the things we'll have to do is make sure we challenge these guys with the schedule for next year, which we've finished. I can't really say who all's on it, but let me tell you what it is. If you thought the schedule this year was tough, the one in the next 2 years is going to be it's going to be one for the record books, I believe.
A little teaser for folks to get excited for schedule drop day, because this year's schedule was phenomenal. I mean, the best teams in the state, and obviously when you guys originally made the schedule, you had that game against IMG that everyone was sad to see go because of the COVID dynamic. But I imagine with that buildup that we're probably going to see one of those kind of more regional type games or two in that mix.
Yeah, we've long since wanted to start expanding our horizons a little bit on the schedule and break out a little bit more into the national scene. So that's something that our administration is behind us with, and I think we have the talent level and the coaching and kind of all the pieces and stars kind of aligning for us to kind of make a push into that realm in the next few years.
We talked a lot about the guys on offense. Defense, you have similar to, I guess, what we talk about with George Hart as a senior that has been kind of overlooked, certainly on the recruiting trail. Christian Mannino is one of my favorite guys to come watch play on a Friday night in the middle of that defensive line, and then everything that everyone else is able to do around him with the juniors like Toston and Woodward and company. It's a lot of fun to watch Christian in the middle of that, and then everything that can happen around him up front on defense.
Yeah, Christian's phenomenal. He was selected as one of our team captains, which is a feat in and of itself. To be recognized as a leader among leaders by your peers is pretty significant. And Christian's a 3-year starter for us. I mean, he started for us as a sophomore, and he was playing against Curtis in the Dome, and he has grown so much, not just physically, but early in his career, he could eat up some space. He could be big, and he could do those things. And the thing that I think about Christian that that has improved so much is this year you're seeing the range. He can run down the line of scrimmage and affect plays that are happening outside the hashes. And that's a credit to the work that he's done in the offseason. It's also, in my opinion, a credit to his wrestling prowess. He is a dynamic wrestler and has been for quite a while. And I think that wrestling over the course of, the past few years has really helped improve his flexibility. It's improved his range. It's improved his toughness. And now what you see is the guy you got there in the middle who's he's all over the place. He's doing his best Connor Finucane impersonation, and he's doing a really good job of it.
Yeah, that's high praise, certainly, with everything that Connor meant to you guys. And I know you had guys like Christian, or when I talked to Wes, he said he wanted to try and bring some of that intensity that Connor brought. And so even when Wes was out going through his concussion protocol and trying to get back on the field, he's on the sideline just making sure that everyone stays hype. And I think you guys have had, we mentioned with Shelton going through some of the shaking back through the groin injury. You guys have had moments where key players have missed and they've been as active on those sidelines as anyone. And someone that I think about with some of that this year is Michael Cerniauskas, the safety that's committed to Army, who had a couple points early in the season and then late in the season where he's on the sideline and he's like another coach / cheerleader all rolled into one for those guys. And but when he has been out there, he's been able to make some huge plays for you guys as you expect from him at this point in his career.
Yeah, when you talk about a West Point football player, that's it. They mold them after Michael Cerniauskas. Connor. I worried a little bit about Connor with West Point, just in how reckless he can be sometimes. I thought if this guy's protecting our country, I'm going to sleep really good at night, because he's got a screw loose a little bit. And he's thriving at Army. They love him. But when you talk about a West Point football player, they look like Michael Cerniauskas. They work really hard. They're super talented. Their leadership skills and ability are just through the roof. Michael, I can't. He's made so many plays for us on the field, some that really probably go unrecognized. There were probably 4 or 5 plays against Rummel where the Diggs kid is into the third level and he's about 8 yards downfield, and it's Diggs and Cerniauskas and 53 yards of width and 60 yards of field, and there's nobody else left. And bang, Cerniauskas tackles him for a 8 or a 9 yard gain, and those plays don't show up real big on the stat sheet. But when you go back and look and watch the tape, you're like, man, if we don't have Cerniauskas in the middle of the field right there, that's a 60-yard touchdown. And, he's done that. He had the big interception against Rummel. And he's a physical, imposing force. If guys are QBs are scrambling around trying to get extra yards at the end of a run, they better be on the lookout for him. All of those things are great. It all pales into comparison to his off the field contributions to the team. He's unbelievable. He's one of the best leaders that we've had in this program in the 11 years that I've been here.
Yeah, it's saying quite a bit. And in those moments when he was out, you saw other guys be able to step up, and I think he helped them a lot with that. Jackson Demouy and what he's meant through his first year back here going to his dad's alma mater and to see him start making the type of plays that he's made at some critical times. Josh Wax is a guy that I've seen chase down long would-be touchdowns and make other teams work for it a couple times. And I've seen him have a big interception. I think that was the Woodlawn game that he had the big interception that kind of helped set some things up. And then out on the perimeter, the corners, Josh Robertson, Connor Stewart, and some of those guys, undersized against some of these bigger receivers, but just go out there and battle any Friday night.
Yeah, those guys, they don't mind coming up and tackling, and a lot of times that's not really what corners do, corners cover, they don't tackle, but Wax, Stewart, Perkins, Arthur Perkins, another young guy that stepped up for us, Jackson Demouy, all of those guys have done just a fantastic job of stepping up. And yeah, they don't, if they're going against a much taller, bigger receiver, they don't back down. They play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They got a little bit of that, undersized, underdog, you can't tell me I'm too small to do this mentality that hopefully I'd like to think they took a little bit of that from their head coach, but those guys are tough, man. And they play the game right. Wax plays it with great effort. Stewart plays it with great intensity and just love of the game. I don't know if there's anybody we have on the team that just loves playing football more than Connor Stewart does. And those guys have been fantastic. They've given up some yards, they've given up some points, but they've come up with some really, really big plays in some critical moments this year. And they're going to have to come up big against Byrd, not necessarily in the passing game, but they're going to have to come up there and make tackles and be able to tackle on the perimeter and get off blocks.
You guys have so many fantastic players. We could easily keep running through a lot of guys, Mikey Alvarado, Harold Lawson, so many guys have had these big play moments, but you mentioned starting the preparation for Byrd. You have 2 weeks for this state championship game. You've been through battles all year. You've had to adjust on the fly. You've had to play some of the other top teams in the state. And a lot of these guys that were on that field last year at Tulane have some experience of what it means to play for a state championship, or guys like Christian 2 years ago in the Dome. You guys now head up to Natchitoches to play CE Byrd. And as you gear up for Byrd and the stage and all these different things, what are those last conversations like for this group of guys that's already been through quite a bit in this weird year as it is?
Yeah, I think one of the main things we try to do is just focus on us, especially this week. In years past, in these bye weeks, you can get a little too focused on the opponent too early, and then the luster of that kind of wears off after 2 weeks, So for us, this week has been really just focus on us, focus on our fundamentals, our technique, improving some things that we need to improve just as football players, not necessarily as it relates to Byrd or the scheme that they run or anything like that. So that's really our focus for this week. And then Friday, we'll introduce the game plan to all the guys, have a practice on Friday that will be sort of centered around Byrd, give the guys off for the weekend on Saturday and Sunday, and then come in on Monday, probably, if our game is further down the road, we may not even practice on Monday. Just depends on when they give us the schedule. So, we try not to get too caught up in it's the state. I don't even think I've mentioned the word state championship to our team at all. The last time I probably said the word state championship was probably at halftime against Rummel in the locker room at Tulane. Because it's not our focus. Our focus is on being the best football players we can be. It's on being the best team that we can be and preparing the best that we can for the biggest and most important game of the season. Not because it's the state championship game, but because it's the next game we got on our schedule, So that's kind of been what the conversations have been about. I think it's going to sink in for these guys next week, that these are their last practices and last workouts in the weight room and that kind of stuff. It always does. But it's nice knowing when the last one is, it really is nice to know that this is the last game. Whether we win or lose, this is it.
And usually it's such a big deal for teams to say they're practicing Thanksgiving week and getting ready for the old quarterfinals. Now you guys will be having some practices on Christmas week, and I'm not going to say new normal, but in this weird year, that's kind of the shift of everybody really ultimately ended up wanting to practice on Christmas week, and you guys get to do it. After everything, it's got to feel awesome to be in this state of the season, because we didn't know if we were going to have football at all at one point. Now you guys are playing for a state championship. Yeah,
it's fantastic. It really is. The thing I'm most excited for is I'm excited for these kids, the seniors that are on this team. As freshmen in our program, they were my first freshman team, and so they've been through this program now for 4 years with me as the leader of the program. And so that first team that I had, 2017, very, very dear to my heart, obviously, not just because they won a state championship, but that was my first team to lead as the head coach here. This team also has a real special place in my heart because it's the first group that will have come through the program, and the only coach that they've known to lead the program is me. And I'm really proud of the young men that they've become because of that. From a coaching standpoint, I can't tell you how much we're ready for this thing to be over. I mean, I'm serious. This is the longest. People probably don't really think about this, but this season has gone on so long for the coaches, and the last minute changes and the staying up late at night to game plan for a team that you just found out you're going to play. And, I know the players don't want it to end, and in a way, the coaches don't either. But from a coaching standpoint, I mean, the end of this can't come fast enough for us. This has been a really, really difficult, taxing season on the coaches and on our families. I mean, normally we're, on to the honey-do list by this point, but that can keeps getting kicked down the road every week. So I managed to extend that one for as long as I could. So
no doubt. And if you get a chance to play for a state championship game or coach for a state championship game, I think that's a good reason to delay it a couple weeks and focus on it after the new year. Just add it to the New Year's resolutions list.
That's right. We'll just keep tacking it on to the end, and hey, after New Year's, we'll get on it.
Coach, I appreciate you, man. I know you guys have a lot that you're kind of hashing through and getting ready for a long road trip next week, and making sure I'm sure a lot of parents have questions and want to know logistics and all those things. So I appreciate you chatting a little bit about the team and getting into this 2-week chunk of getting ready for Byrd and that trip up to Natchitoches.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I appreciate you having me on, and appreciate all the stuff you do for our kids, man. It really is. It's awesome. I don't know that our players in Louisiana realize just how good they have it with all of the people that give them exposure and interviews, and between guys like you and then Robin, and just the coverage that they get. It's second to none, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Y'all make it fun. And for any of your kids, if they watch this, I think the big takeaway is put down the young boy for a second, go listen to Mystical, and just kind of figure out some of that old stuff that you were listening to when you were their age.
Absolutely.
Again, he's Coach Gabe Fertitta, the Catholic High Bears, getting ready to play for a 4th straight state championship game. They'll be facing the CE Byrd Yellow Jackets in Natchitoches at some point shortly after Christmas. And for Louisiana versus all y'all, Jarrett Roser.